Hi, and welcome to Weight Loss Winformation. I am your host, Dr. Connie Stapleton. This is episode 234, and our topic today is, are you a people pleaser? If so, your healthy lifestyle is in jeopardy. If you or someone you know is a people pleaser, then you're going to want to listen to this episode and hopefully suggest they listen to it as well. People pleasing can absolutely interfere in your plans to follow through with a healthy lifestyle that leads to a healthy weight for your body. The Weight Loss Winformation Podcast gives you essential psychological information to help you lose weight and, more importantly, to help keep you at a healthy weight for your body. No matter how you're working to lose weight and no matter how much weight you want to lose, Weight Loss Winformation will keep you moving in a positive direction. Let's get started because, well, why wait? Get it? Pun intended. So, hello, my friends, my winning friends, my weight loss winning friends. Today is Wednesday, and this is yet the second time I've recorded this exact podcast. The first being yesterday, when even though my setup looked exactly like it does today and the same lights are blinking, there was no sound. Hence, my saying, it's hard to be me and yet so very entertaining. Now, I don't know who that's entertainment for, but I promise you it is not me. Although I will say, on previous occasions when I have done the same thing, somehow, don't ask me how, and recorded without any sound, the second take is so much better. So here we go. We're going to get started with our second take of, are you a people pleaser? And if so, your healthy lifestyle is in jeopardy. I think it was Jeff Foxworthy. Some of you may be too young to know who Jeff Foxworthy is, but I think he was the comedian who did that whole shtick on you might be a redneck if. Today we're going to play a version of that, and it's called You Might Be a People Pleaser If. And if you are a people pleaser, I'm going to tell you how damaging being a people pleaser is to you and to your relationships with food, your relationships with your mental health, your physical health, and absolutely with other people. People pleasing is a destroyer of relationships. Sounds enticing. So let's get started. Here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to discuss what a people pleaser is, even though it's pretty evident, but we're also going to give some great examples in which you might see yourself or someone with whom you're very close. And then we'll talk about what's behind people pleasing, what drives people pleasing behavior. Finally, we'll talk about what can you do to take better care of yourself and your life rather than trying to please others so much of the time. And if you are not the people pleaser, but maybe you are partnered with one or have a good friend with people pleasing tendencies, you're going to want them to listen to this podcast as well. So I'm guessing you know what a people pleaser is and kind of gives itself away in the title, people pleaser. But a lot of times people don't recognize themselves as such. But I promise you one thing, if you're a people pleaser, whether you recognize that in yourself or not, I guarantee you other people see it in you because you can see it in other people, at least if you know them well at all. So what are the signs that maybe you or someone you know is a people pleaser? By definition, people pleasers are people who disregard their own needs in favor of someone else's. So it's not that they don't have needs because we all have healthy adult needs, but those who are deep into people pleasing are going to put somebody else's needs over their own on a regular basis. All of us engage in people pleasing. Sometimes it's a healthy and polite thing to do in a relationship, but if it's a constant people pleasing exhibition, then that's a signal of not the best emotional health. So here we go. I'm going to give you some examples. Some will be specifically related to food issues, others can pertain to other things. But I always go beyond bariatrics, meaning I'm focused on your entire life, weight issues specifically, but also other areas of your life because you're a whole person. And this people pleasing thing interferes in all relationships, in all areas of your life. And that can include not following through with what you know to be our healthy behaviors for yourself. So, one thing that can help identify someone who's people pleasing is someone who conforms to things that aren't helpful to them or maybe harmful to them. People who go along with the crowd. And this is often common with teenagers. Teenagers' number one goal is to fit in and be included and be part of the gang and be liked. And we all have that need as an adult as well. But some of us learn that I'm not going to do unhealthy things for myself just because everybody else is. Makes me think of, the parents who said, hey, if everybody was jumping off a bridge, would you? Well, think about your teenage days and maybe drinking or trying drugs. A lot of people, including myself, gave into a lot of peer pressure when it came to at least drinking. I was definitely not into any drugs in high school. I tried marijuana in college, hated it, but that was the extent of my drug use. Although alcohol is a drug, right? And my use of alcohol continued to a very problematic extent. More on that later. But as a younger person, a lot of the reasons I drank was to fit in and be part of the crowd. That was a harmful thing to me for a lot of reasons. But maybe you have engaged in other kinds of harmful behavior because other people were doing it, such as maybe you go somewhere and everybody is partaking of all the desserts and you know that you are trying to manage how much sugar intake you have, carb intake. And so your intention is to maybe have a bite or two and then be done. But people are like, come on, you've got to try this one. Oh, come on, try this. My grandma made it. Or your grandma's there going, you've got to eat some of this. You know it's your favorite. And you sort of get peer pressured to conform to something that may not be good for you. So that's one example. But you also might be a people pleaser if you find yourself disregarding your own interests for the sake of others. Now, again, this in and of itself, not necessarily an unhealthy behavior, but it can be. So maybe you agree to go camping, tent camping, and you're like, my God, if there's anything I hate, it's camping. I hate sleeping on the ground. I hate getting wet. I hate being out with the bugs. I hate camping. But you know what? I'm in this new relationship and they want to go camping. And so, okay, I'm going to go camping. And then the next thing they want to do is go bowling. And you also hate bowling. And you're like, I don't want to go bowling. But this person wants to go bowling. I want that person to like me. And so I'm going to go bowling. And then the next thing is, and before long, you are saying yes to doing all the things the other person wants to do without saying, you know what I'd like to do? Here's something I would be excited if you would do with me. I have a young woman who's dating a guy, and she's thinking this relationship is going to be long term. She's hoping for commitment, marriage down the line. And we're talking about this because she is giving into doing a lot of things that he likes to do. He's a very social person. He has lots of groups of friends. She's an introvert by nature. She likes a few close friends. And so when he's constantly, Friday night, we're doing this with my friends, and Saturday night, we got this going on, and all day Sunday, the so-and-so party is happening. And she's been agreeing to go along with all of these things. And I said, listen, if you don't start telling him that is too much, she's like, it's wearing me out. I can't keep up this pace. I said, if you don't tell him, you're doing two things. First of all, you're engaging in people pleasing behavior, which in the long run is going to bite you in the butt because it's not who you really are to be socializing all weekend long, especially with people you don't really know. You like small, intimate conversations. And so if you continue to sure, I'll do all these things with him, he's going to think you're this socially active person like he is. And what's going to happen when you are, a year into the marriage and you're like, I don't really like doing these things. He's going to be like, what are you talking about? We did this the whole 3 years we dated. So I said, be careful because you're setting yourself up by not being completely straightforward. You're false advertising for one thing, but you're also, more importantly, not being true to yourself. And if you want this to be a healthy relationship long term, then you need to learn to say, I'm willing to compromise and go to the event on Friday night and half of the day on Sunday, but I don't I don't float like that. I got to recharge my batteries more than you do. So that's an example of how it can get out of hand, maybe not intentionally, but it can. Another example of a people pleaser is really trying hard to maintain closeness either with a friend or a friend group or a specific person by self-sacrificing. So it's sort of the same thing. You're putting their things above yours, but it's a little bit different because you're going to places that are probably, we'll talk about food for a minute. Let's say that you've had bariatric surgery or you're on a GLP and GLP-1 and don't have a big appetite and your friend group wants to go to buffets. That's where they want to go all the time and you're like, "You know what? It's a waste of my money. I can barely eat anything there. I don't want to get myself off my target, off my plans for healthy eating. So, well, I want to be liked. I want to be included. I want to be one of the gang." And that need to feel closeness, that need to be included, that need to feel part of the group is stronger for you than your need to stay out of a place that has a lot of triggers for you. That's not healthy. What would be healthy is to say, you know what, you guys, I clearly get it. You all want to go to this buffet. It's great. That's not really a safe place for me. How about if I meet up with you after dinner? That's what a healthy, strong adult who's not a complete people pleaser would do. Say what you need, ask for what you want, consider other options so you can get your need for belonging and being part of the group met, but not compromising what's good for you. People pleasers oftentimes experience a whole lot of anxiety. This is some of what drives people pleasing behavior, which we'll get into a little bit more in a bit. But this anxiety about feeling abandoned. Now, this may be conscious or subconscious, but people often go along with things because they don't want to be abandoned. And if the group goes without them, they're going to feel abandoned. Or let's say your friends understand that the buffet is not the healthiest place for you. They're respectful about it. And so they plan dinner at the buffet and they don't invite you. Now, somebody who's a people pleaser and has this deep, deep need to be included or they'll feel abandoned is going to feel abandoned in this case. Even though the group is trying to be protective and say, we respect your boundaries, we respect that this isn't healthy for you, so we're not inviting you. The people pleaser is going to be deeply, deeply wounded because they're going to be like, oh my God, see, they abandoned me. I don't fit in. I don't belong. They don't want me there. And remember, in our last episode, we talked about how we all have a filter. And that filter is something that we take people's behaviors and words and we sift through it and we make it fit our own narrative. And so if your narrative is everybody leaves me, everybody abandons me, you therefore become a big people pleaser. But any slight, perceived slight, is going to be taken as they're abandoning me. I don't matter. I'm not good enough. Not healthy. Not healthy. Not healthy. Again, you might be a people pleaser if you are a total conflict avoider. Now, I know that one hits a lot of you right in the gut. The reason I know that is because I've worked with patients for the last 30 years, and so many people struggle with conflict. Now, that can be reasonable if they come from a background where conflict meant throwing things or screaming or hollering or hitting or kicking, or so conflict may have been experienced in a very dramatic and traumatic way for a child. Or it could also be that they never saw conflict. Their parents never argued in front of the kids, so they have no idea about what a healthy conflict would look like. So they avoid conflict. It's like, A, I don't have the skills. B, I don't want it to turn into World War III like it seemed to in my house. So conflict, no, 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 not going there. Well, a healthy adult says conflict is a part of life. Conflict doesn't have to mean yelling and screaming and fighting and biting and all the other craziness. Conflict is healthy in a relationship as long as it's stated in appropriate communication terms. Here's another problem. A lot of healthy adults don't have healthy communication skills. What they do is they go in and they're like, hey, you're doing this and it ticks me off. That's not going to be received very well. As opposed to, and then we're going to get the ugly kind of conflict, as opposed to, when you said that to me, I felt hurt, or I felt disregarded, or I felt accused. I would appreciate if we could talk about that, so I'm making sure I get the message you're trying to send me. How many people have those skills? Not many. So conflict, it can be a scary thing if you're ill-equipped without the right tools, or if all you've ever seen is scary ways of people exhibiting conflict. But as a healthy adult, you have the ability and the responsibility to learn what a healthy conflict is. So if you're a huge conflict avoider, it's a big red flag that you might be a people pleaser. Another example of you might be a people pleaser if you, I'm chuckling because I'll explain in a minute, if you accept invitations to do things you might not want to do. I'm going to use myself here in this example. Now, there are times in life, my life specifically, and for sure in yours, where we do things that we don't want to do. For example, how many wedding showers have you been to, or baby showers, or engagement parties, or, things you're like, oh, I don't really want to go, but of course I'm going to go. I care about that person. I love that person. I love what they're doing, this expansion of their family or whatever it is. So you love the person, you don't like the events. And the reason I hate those kind of events is I hate small talk. Despise it, uncomfortable with it. It feels like a huge waste of my time and I have no interest in it. Now, put me in a group of 2 or 3 or 4 people where we have a really good discussion and we talk about real things and what's going on and how we're feeling and all those good things. I am all in. But small talk, oh my goodness, not a fan. So I don't have this t-shirt yet, but I think it's really funny and I want one. But on the t-shirt, it says, sorry, I'm late. I didn't want to come. Because that is the truth for me in many a situation. Now, if I ignored that and I went to all the things all the time, the ones I didn't really need to be there, or the people I didn't really know that well or care that much about, those I'm going to say no to. But if I were a complete people pleaser, I'd be at all of them because I don't want to feel unincluded. I don't want to feel like if I turn them down, they'll abandon me and not ever invite me again. But that's what goes on with big time people pleasers. They don't want anybody not to like them, which goes back to last week's episode about who cares what people think? Well, we all do to some extent. But if you're a people pleaser because you care so much about what people think of you, you're going to be doing all the things for all the people all the time. And you're going to be abandoning what's true and right for you. Another trait of being a people pleaser is having a difficult time advocating for your own needs or having a lack of boundaries or both. So a lack of advocating for your needs might look like, I'm coming to the family picnic or reunion or whatever, and I recently had weight loss surgery. And so I'm going to tell people in advance, please don't offer me food. I'm coming for the conversation. I'm working hard on my health. You don't have to tell everybody you've had weight loss surgery if you don't want to, or maybe you're on a GLP-1 and you don't want them to know that either. So you just say, you know what, I'm coming to the event. I'm working really hard with my doctor on improving my health. So I'm going to focus more on the conversation. I would respect and appreciate if you didn't offer me food. Boom. That's a great thing to do. Now, a people pleaser's going to go there and they're going to be like, oh, come on. Somebody's going to say, you got to try one of Aunt Rose's whatevers or Grandma's baked beans. They're your favorite. And they're going to do that. And a people pleaser is going to give in and they're going to cave instead of advocating for their own needs. No, my health is really important right now. I'm working with my doctor. So reiterate, restate, be a broken record about what's going on with you and get the job done there, friends. Or this goes also into having a lack of boundaries. No, I'm not coming to the event because there's too much temptation for me there. Oh, come on, you have to come. Everybody's going to be there. Everybody's going to want to see you. You know what? Maybe I'll come later in the evening when all the food's been put away, and I'll visit with some people. But setting those boundaries, not just with other people, but with yourself, which is a whole different topic. But we have to, a people pleaser have a hard time setting boundaries, and they have a real hard time saying, that doesn't work for me. I would like to share my idea. I don't feel like I was understood in this conversation. I would like to blah, 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 blah. So healthy adults do those things. They stand up for themselves. They say, no, you're not going to speak to me in that tone of voice. That sort of thing. So if you have trouble advocating for yourself or have a hard time setting boundaries and maintaining them, you might be a people pleaser. Another example of you might be a people pleaser would be the belief. Remember those negative thoughts that a lot of us carry and that filter that we have and that story we tell ourselves, our narrative? Well, if you believe deep down that you're not likable, unless you continually meet another person's needs. Now, let me tell you what that looks like in a relationship. It looks like a doormat because I have this huge need to be liked. And I only believe that I'm likable if I'm doing things for you. So I'm telling the whole world, I just like doing things for other people. And there may be some truth to that, but there may be a deeper layer to this too that says, I have to do things for people because then they'll like me. So you're in a relationship and you're always the giver and you're always the one 2 steps ahead of the other person's needs. And at first it's very flattering. They're like, oh my gosh, I've got this partner who really, oh my God, she's so in tune to my needs and she really provides for me, or he's really listening to me and he's up on the things that I've said I like. Oh my gosh. But let me show you later how that's going to backfire if you're a people pleaser. Are you a person who is excessively apologetic? I'm sorry. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. You take blame for things that you didn't even do. It's fine. I did it because you don't want conflict or you don't want criticism or you don't want tension. So you take the blame or I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Now, remember, I've shared in past episodes that if 10 people tell you you have a tail, my friend, you better turn around and take a look. And what that means is, if a lot of people are like, stop apologizing. Did you know you always apologize? You really don't need to apologize. And if you hear that from different people, it's like you're getting the same message from several sources. It's probably a true statement and something you might need to look at. So if you are an excessive apologizer, chances are, ding, 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 you're a people pleaser. Here are a couple other examples and then we'll move on. People pleasers very rarely disagree with others. So you might be in a group of friends and they're talking about let's say a form of art, watercolor, and they're all praising watercolor and you're thinking, yeah, watercolor's okay, but you know what I really like? I really like acrylic paintings. So instead of saying, oh, you guys, I like watercolor, but my heart is with this acrylic painting. It's so vibrant and it's so textured and I know nothing about art, so I'm making this all up. But a person who's a people pleaser will keep silent. And that's a very benign topic. But there are other topics, we won't mention politics or religion, that can get very heated. And people pleasers are certainly not going to disagree there because God knows they don't want conflict. But a healthy person wouldn't be like, my way or the highway. They'd be like, I hear you talking and I'm listening to your reasons for believing what you believe. I think differently and I respect how you think and I hope you'll respect how I think. Those are healthy adult skills. A lot of us don't have those. We're certainly not born with them. We have to learn those. So maybe you're not equipped and maybe you've seen some fallout from somebody sharing a differing opinion. So you keep it to yourself because you certainly aren't going to advocate for yourself. You're certainly not going to risk disagreeing because you certainly don't want to risk abandonment. So here's the deal. When a person learns this behavior, and it usually starts young, maybe it's modeled by a parent or a sibling, or maybe they just learn from experience, keep my mouth shut and nothing bad's going to happen. Keep my mouth shut and I'm not going to be in trouble. Keep my mouth shut, I won't be blamed for anything. All of those things. So they learn not to express their opinion for whatever reason. But here's what's going to happen over time. They don't know what they like. They don't know what they don't like. They don't know what kind of things they're interested in. They don't know their hobbies. They don't know. What do I need? What do I want here? What do I wish for? It's very, very difficult. It's also very difficult to say no when they don't want to say no. And it's hard to say yes to things that they actually do want to do or to propose that idea. So people pleasers a lot of time are in the dark about their own behavior. And that's one of the things we'll talk about when we get to the part about how do you overcome this people-pleasing behavior or learn your way out of it. So let's talk about some various traits. But before we go on to that, I wanted to make a comment about people pleasers not knowing themselves. This is a true story, and this was many, many, many years ago. I worked with a young woman, and she was a medical student. And in all the years I've done therapy, which is about 30, I have had never before, nor have I ever since, met a person this disengaged from who they were. To the point, this young woman did not know her favorite color. She really didn't know what kinds of foods she liked. She really didn't know what she was interested in. And here's how hers came to be. And again, this is an extreme case. So if you're a people pleaser, you probably didn't come from this. But now this young woman was married, mind you. And so, her husband obviously made all the choices, picked out all the things, made the decisions. Because from the time this woman was a very young girl, her mother made every decision for her. She made her decision about what clothes she would wear the night before, and this went on through high school. Not kidding. The mother made decisions about what she would eat. Mothers need to make some decisions, and so do fathers, but this was extreme. Like, I didn't pick my kids' clothes out when they were in high school. They went to the college. She went to the college her parents wanted her to go to. She followed through with the career her parents wanted for her. Very smart. So medical school wasn't that hard for her. But I don't know if it's what she wanted to do because she never thought about it. She just did whatever her parents said. Here was the most extreme example of her mother being controlling that I've ever seen, ever. When this woman got married, I'm not kidding you, her mother wrote out her thank you notes to the wedding guests, addressed the envelopes, and had her daughter sign her name to them. For the love of God, no wonder this young woman knew nothing about what she liked or what she desired or what she thought was interesting. I'll guarantee you she chose nothing in that wedding. So here she was, and I was astounded. I mean, I'm working with a woman in her late 20s, and she doesn't know the first thing about herself. So here's a little bit of a spoiler. When we get to the part about what do you do, one of the first things you got to do is start to get to know yourself. Because if you don't know what you like or want or need, you sure as heck can't tell anybody else. All right, so let's talk about some common traits associated with people pleasers. And these first four are going to be like, wow, sounds like a great person. I want to be around that person. And to people who only know this person on a surface level, they're going to be like, this is the greatest human on the planet. These are usually people you work with because they don't often get to know the real you or the deeper version of you. But here's some traits that are commonly associated with people pleasers. They're agreeable. Well, of course, they're going to go along with anything. Why? They don't want to start conflict. They don't want to be left out of the group. They don't want to be shunned. So they're very agreeable. Oh my God, and helpful. Boy, if you want something done at an office, you find yourself a good people pleaser because they're going to be volunteering to do all the things. Why? Because then they're seen as valuable, because then they're included, because then others sing their praises and find them so useful and helpful. They're also very friendly. Oh my gosh, they're so friendly. What can I do to help you? How can I help? The coworkers will be like, wow, this is the best. What an amazing human. And to some degree, obviously, they are. And they're also very self-sacrificing. Oh, no, let me do that for you. No, we'll use your idea. No, you know what? I like that. Let's go with that. So, from the outside, this person's agreeable. They're helpful. They're friendly. They're self-sacrificing. Who wouldn't want to be around them? Now, these are positive traits unless they're used extensively and only. Meaning, I don't do anything else except go along, please help, be friendly. I don't set boundaries. I don't say I cannot do any more overtime. I don't say I can't take on another project. I don't say, it makes me really nervous when we talk about all these different ideas and you're asking me to lead these things. I'll just volunteer to lead it. So underneath some of these behaviors, especially if they're part of the persona of the people pleaser, is a person who has really poor boundaries. That's not helpful. What happens when you have really poor boundaries? You don't stick to what you're doing. If you want to be on a healthy routine and somebody else has a different idea, you go along with their idea. It might not be good for your health journey. You're very dependent, and sometimes so dependent on another person because you have this huge perception that they're going to leave you. And if you don't do things with them and for them, whatever it is they want to do, then you're going to be abandoned by them. So you're very dependent. And in a relationship, people often say they're clingy. So your friends might be like, God, your new boyfriend's really, really clingy. Or that girl, she is such a clinger. Oh my God, doesn't seem healthy at all. Because it's not. Because it's not. And what's driving that behavior, that clingy, like suffocating behavior, is this absolute unhealthy need to be approved of, to be attached to be part of, to be loved by. So it's driven by this desperate need for those things. The truth is, people who are people pleasers often have low self-esteem. And that is because when we lay down on the ground and play doormat and let people walk all over us, we don't feel very good about ourselves. Yeah, we want to be willing to help others. We want to be able to do things for other people. But if it's all the time and we're starting to have footprints on our back, it's excessive. And remember, we talked about People who are people pleasers have a hard time standing up for themselves. They have a hard time saying no. They have a hard time saying, this is what I need in this circumstance. So they're laid out on the floor like a doormat. And it's an indication of low self-esteem. I know if you're a people pleaser, you're like, no, that's not me. Well, maybe not on the surface, but there may be some aspects of these traits that are true for you. So I would invite you just to listen with an open mind. You're not all of these things. Nobody's all of these things all the time, but these may be part of the bigger picture. A lot of people pleasers are very anxious because they don't know how to make all the people happy all the time. And how can I make this person happy and that person happy? And how can I make all the people on the team happy? And how can I do all the things to make sure everything's done perfectly? Oh, I'm so worried. Well, of course, because you can't make all the people happy all the time. You can't do the job 6 different ways to make 6 different bosses happy. A people pleaser is in a constant state of anxiety depending on their circumstances because there's a lot of people's needs to be met. They're in a real bind. Perfectionism is a trait of a people pleaser. Now, we've talked about perfectionism in many an episode, and we've talked about the fact that perfectionism is an unhealthy character trait. And perfectionism is exhibited by people who don't feel good about themselves. Why? Because if I do things perfectly, you can't criticize me. There's nothing to criticize. This often stems from the kid who brought home all A's and got 1 B, and the parents said, why is this a B? There was an expectation that you'd be perfect. So now the child who brought home the B feels like they've disappointed their parent. And is there anything worse for a child than feeling they've disappointed their parents? It's so much worse than the parent being angry with them. Oh my God, I disappointed them. There's something wrong with me. And that is the message children internalize when parents show disappointment in them. So the child tries harder and harder and harder to be perfect. Same with kids who maybe have struggled with their weight or are ostracized by their peers for any other reason. Kids so desperately need and want to fit in, normal as the day is long. So do adults. But if you're in a position as a child where you are shunned, then that low self-esteem becomes internalized because children who are made fun of or who are the last to be picked on the team or who are called names by peers at school or are told by parents at home you'll never amount to anything or who are teased or bullied about their weight, they don't say, what's wrong with my mom that she would call me names? Or why are these kids so mean that they would call me a name? Why would they be so mean and leave me out? No, 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 no. That's not what children do. They go, something's wrong with me. If something wasn't wrong with me, they'd ask me to play. Why is mommy always calling me names? They don't think mommy is being an inappropriate parent. They think something's wrong with me. If something wasn't wrong with me, my mommy wouldn't call me names. That's what children do. They internalize that message. So then just because you mature in age doesn't mean that message goes away. So if you carry that message with you into your adult life, it's very likely you become a people pleaser because you don't want to experience that rejection anymore. So if I can please all the people all the time and juggle all the balls in the air and keep them going and look perfect and look happy and be friendly doing it, I'm a fraud. That's what I am. I'm a fraud. No, I'm not thinking I'm a fraud. I'm thinking I just really like to do nice things for other people because that's how I make sense of my own behavior, even though on the inside, I'm probably pretty pissed off. We'll get to that in just a minute. But the truth is, people who are people pleasers, anxious, perfectionistic, avoid the conflict, and have low self-worth. They may have big hearts and be genuinely kind-hearted and want to do things for other people. And that is a part of the picture. But a people pleaser does it more so they feel okay about themselves. They need to tend to the needs of others because they think this will fulfill my own emotional needs. They're not aware of that consciously. So if I do this for them, it's one of those transactional things. If I think of my boss's needs ahead of them and have it all done, then they're going to think how valuable I am. And I really need to feel valued because I don't feel very good about myself. I've shared with a lot of you how I had in my previous life in sales had to see myself at the top of that sales list because internally I had little self-worth. But if I saw my name at the top of the list, it gave me a false sense of I have value, I have worth. And I do, and you do, and we all do, just because we're human beings. But I needed to see my name at the top of the list to see that I was accomplishing something because internally I didn't have it. I wasn't aware of it at the time. So a lot of the insight and awareness comes later on down the road. It comes with hindsight and evaluation. So people pleasers feel valuable when they're complying with others, when they're helping other people, when they get praise from other people. And oftentimes they just don't see it in themselves. That makes it hard to break through that, right? People will say, but I just like helping people. To which I say, that's probably very, very, very true. I'm sure you do like helping other people. Now let's go a little bit deeper. Let's take this a little deeper. This is how therapy works, friends. You go a little deeper. So when you help other people, what do you experience? Well, they're usually grateful or they're appreciative. Oh, so they're appreciative. And how do you feel when people are appreciative? Well, I feel good. Well, what do you mean you feel good? Well, I feel like I was able to do something for somebody else. And when you're able to do something for somebody else, digging deeper, what would that feeling be? How would you describe that feeling? Well, it's rewarding. Oh, okay, now we got it, right? I do things for other people because there's a reward in it for me. Now, that's not the only reason you may do it, but if you work or if you are a chronic people pleaser, you can pretty much drill down with the person. The reason they do things is based on a personal need, and that goes for all of us. Most of us do things to get our own needs met, but to the extent that you do things to the detriment of yourself, that's when things fall on the negative side. In statistics, I had to take all these statistics classes, and math is not my thing. The one thing I remember from statistics class is that things need to regress toward the mean. So, what does that mean in real terms? Let's take the issue of dependency. A people pleaser has huge emotional dependency needs. They need to be approved of. They need to feel appreciated. They need to feel valued. They need to feel included. They need to feel wanted. And to the extent that they're constantly giving of themselves, constantly, not sticking up for themselves, not saying what they need, not saying what they want. That's one end of a continuum. On the other end of the continuum, an equally unhealthy place to be is the person who needs nothing from anybody. They think they're totally self-sufficient. Nobody is. But they are like that old, I think it's a Simon and Garfunkel song, and the words are, I am a rock. I am an island. And an island feels no pain. And an island never cries. So I never need anybody. Nobody needs to be there for me. I'm good. I'm like a rock. Neither one of those are healthy places to be. So we want to regress toward the mean, which means come toward the middle. And at the middle is the healthy dependency, which is a person who says, you know what, I need people. I need people to help me with certain things in my life, and I'm capable of doing some things independently. So it's that balance. And when two people come together in a relationship, and now you're going to learn a little bit about me and my husband and people-pleasing behavior. But let's talk about what drives this people-pleasing behavior. And I'll use us as the examples, okay? So what causes this? What drives this people-pleasing behavior? And where do people, where do they get this from, being this people pleaser? How does, and How does being a people pleaser interfere with your happiness, with your health goals? Here we go. All right. People pleasers, somebody who needs to please other people. And in my marriage, when my husband and I first got married 40 some years ago, he was the people pleaser in the relationship. And I was the person on the other end of the spectrum who was the taker. He was the giver, I was the taker. Now, in my previous relationship, before my husband, I was in a relationship with a man who turned out to be abusive, verbally, emotionally, and one time physically. So I had enough self-esteem to say, no, I'm not putting up with this. But I lacked enough self-esteem for a long time, and I put up with a lot of his controlling behaviors. And I became very much a people pleaser, never contradicted him, never spoke up about what I wanted or needed, always went along with whatever plans he made for us, just like a puppet. I was like a puppet in that relationship. So it's not unusual for people in relationships to go from one extreme to the other. So I was the people pleaser in that relationship. And then in my next relationship with my husband, who was a natural people pleaser, I became the bully. Think about extreme weight loss. People who have, who feel bad about themselves for a long time and don't behave confidently and, whatever. And then all of a sudden they lose a lot of weight and they get divorced and they're like, well, I didn't think there was anybody else who would want me. And they stuck around in that relationship because they had a deep need, as do we all, but it was a desperate need when they thought they couldn't get anybody else to be included, loved, wanted, all of that. So our needs drive our behavior. So let's talk about what drives this need for people pleasing. People pleasers fear rejection. So I'm in this unhealthy relationship and with a man who told me nobody else would love me, nobody else loved me like he loved me. He would make fun of if I put makeup on, why are you doing that? Or he would criticize what I wore or if how anything, criticize. And so, because I so desperately feared being abandoned by him, because I felt totally alone in the world, which was, part of his, his control was he wanted to have complete control of me. And I was so desperately needy that I thought nobody else would love me. Nobody else would want me. I don't have anybody else. I'm staying with him. It's miserable, but it's familiar. So I feared rejection. I had insecurities. I needed to have somebody. That was the root of a lot of my people-pleasing behavior. A person also may be a people pleaser because they feel failure. So if I stop pleasing other people or doing for other people, then they're going to be disappointed in me, maybe like mom or like my dad. And then they're going to punish me by not talking to me or not inviting me or not including me. And there will be negative consequences for me. So I'll just go along and be that nice, happy people pleaser that, looks like this amazing human on the outside. So people pleasing can be driven by a fear of rejection, a fear of insecurity, a fear of failure, a fear of punishment, and seeking approval, needing validation is the big hallmark of a people pleaser. So I wanted validation from this boyfriend. I always wanted validation from my parents. And not that I didn't get it overtly, like they never said, great job, or I'm so proud of you, or that's so wonderful. But they really didn't engage. Like, I got mediocre grades in school, but nobody was looking at my grades. Who cared? Nobody cared. So I really needed desperately validation and not to feel alone. That's why I was with that boyfriend. Now, come along my husband and me. So I get out of that bad relationship and I find this man who absolutely dotes on me. So opposite of the bad boyfriend. My husband, who is now my husband, he paid attention to me. It was like he kissed the ground I walked on. And I was like, oh my God, this is such a relief. This is beautiful. This man just treats me like a queen. This is amazing. Little did I know that he was coming from a very, very unhealthy place himself. So we're young, it's like, oh my God, I'm being treated like a queen. This is great. We get married. We have a baby immediately. We have 2 more babies immediately. We have 3 babies now, and I'm 25. So what happens after that point is part of what led us into therapy. Thank God, because without it, there would be no 42 years of marriage at this point. So my husband, being the people pleaser, turns out that he was very emotionally dependent on me. He had been traumatized. Trauma response is another reason that people become people pleasers. So, an example of this is people, the fight, flight, or freeze behavior that happens in trauma. There's another experience or another response, and it's called fawning. So a lot of times people who are traumatized, either, they live in this constant state of fight or flight, or they freeze. But some people start fawning, meaning they're people pleasing. They want to settle conflicts. They want to maintain the approval of other people in friendships and relationships. And it's because they want to please you, and they want you to like them, and they want you to care for them. Now, my husband was raised in a family with 5 boys, 1 girl, and the entire family will tell you that Steve, my husband, was his mother's scapegoat. She had some traumas that led to her being kind of a rager, and everything was Steve's fault. She picked on him. She just was brutal emotionally towards Steve. So he became a fawner. He was fawning all over me. Whatever I did was great. Whatever I did was wonderful. And at the beginning, that was delightful, right? Oh my gosh, it was wonderful. I thought, oh, this is great. But what happened is he was so emotionally dependent on me that, and fearful that I would leave him. He had already been divorced once. And he was so fearful that I might leave him that he would do whatever I wanted. If I said jump, he said how high. If I said crap, he'd say what color. And it got to the point where I was like, ew, this is kind of gross. But he was so afraid of making me unhappy. Like his mother was always unhappy with me. He was so afraid that I would treat him badly. And I started to do exactly that. I started to be like, come on, not consciously. But what happened was he was not respecting himself. He wouldn't say, this is what I would like to do, or, I would appreciate if you'd ask me that more calmly, or, he didn't stand up for his needs. He never said what he wanted. He never said what he needed. He was just so busy fawning all over me. And then I did the natural human thing, and I took advantage of it. That's one of the consequences, is that people don't like people who are people pleasers over the long haul. At first, it's like, God, this is great and wonderful. And then it's like, oh my God, watch this. I can do anything and they won't say anything. It's not a conscious thing. It was not a conscious thing for me. But I think that there was a part of me that was like, come on, stand up to me. I don't want a puppet for a husband. I had been a puppet in my prior relationship. Now I was the bully. He was now being a puppet. So that was one of the things that when we went to therapy, which was really because of my addiction. I was 29 years old now. We'd been married for 6 years with our 3 babies. And I had addiction going up all over the place. I was constantly working. Wasn't drinking much at this point, but I would use pain medication. So I was constantly numbed out. Anyway, I ended up in treatment, 6 weeks, outpatient. He ended up in the same program for the family members. And what we learned from that is I was being the bully. He was being the people pleaser. I had switched from being the people pleaser to being the bully. And a lot of times that's how people match up. We match up with our insecurities. And even though he looked like this great and wonderful guy, and I looked like this bully, which I was, we both had to learn. He had to learn that he was not respecting himself by not standing up to me or standing up for himself, more importantly. And so he had to learn to say, you know what, Connie, I'm not going to let you talk to me that way. I'm going to go out and do something else. I'll come back and we can try again. And I was like, wow, it shocked me at first. And then I started to be like, I really respect that. And I had to learn to not be a bully. I had to learn that I didn't get to take advantage of other people and push people around and use my voice as a weapon. So we both went through the 6 weeks of treatment, and then we went through 4 years of marriage counseling. And I'm telling you, we learned the communication skills. We learned what it meant to set boundaries. We learned to talk about what we thought in an appropriate way. And we've been back to therapy a few times over the years. But here's the deal. Both of us were ill-equipped. Neither of us understood why we were behaving the way we were. So it doesn't surprise me that most people pleasers don't see themselves in that way. Most bullies don't see themselves in that way. We have to do some learning of ourselves. There are some pretty negative consequences when you're a people pleaser. One being you lose respect from other people. Like the people at the job who just see those friendly, outgoing, willing to do everything persons don't see this other part. They think you're just fabulous and wonderful. But the people who you're closest to, they pick up on this and they're like, God, don't be such a doormat. And you lose the respect of other people. And consequently, you lose the respect of yourself. Your neglect of self leads to a lack of respect for yourself. The neglect of self comes in the form of not saying what you want, not saying what you need, giving into other people's wants, meaning you end up at the buffet and now you're no longer working toward your health goals. You give in to grandma who says you can just have a little and now you're not following your health goals. You give in to your friends who say, let's not go to the gym, let's go to the buffet, instead of standing up for yourself and saying, this is a priority to me. So self-care goes out the window a lot of times for people pleasers, and this does not bode well for your goals of living a healthy life, not only with your physical health, but your emotional health, because depression and stress are consequences of being a people pleaser because you find out you can't please all of the people all the time. And like we mentioned earlier, now you're all stressed out trying to do exactly that. You're depressed because you don't feel valued, you don't feel important, you're feeling like nobody listens to you, and you're internalizing it all. And that's anger. That's anger. Internalized anger becomes depression. Then you develop this resentment, this passive aggressiveness. Okay, you know what? I'm not going to tell you that I'm mad that you stayed out golfing for the 6th day in a row with your friends. I'm going to slam the cupboards. I'm going to give you the silent treatment. I'm going to make sure that there's no money in your account, whatever it happens to be. But take note of this, my friends. Resentment that builds and builds and builds is the biggest destroyer of relationships. So the people pleaser is going to get pissed. And the people pleaser is going to start acting out. Not directly. They're not going to say, you know what, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of you being such a selfish person. I'm tired of you doing all the things you want. I'm tired of you not caring about what I think. They're telling all their friends those things about you. But what they're not doing is saying, you know what, I need you to stay home and spend some time with me. I would like to go out with my friends tonight instead of you golfing again. I would really appreciate if you would quit bringing that crap food in the house because it's really triggering to me. I would appreciate if you would stop showing your love for me by bringing me my favorite candy. It's not helping me. So they take it, and they're like a ticking time bomb. Ticking time bomb. Mounting resentment, biggest destroyer of relationships. The other thing is, if you're a doormat, people pleaser, you lose your ability to enjoy yourself. So maybe you go along to the camping trip and everybody's having a great time, but you're not because you're pissed. And inside, you're resentful. I hate being here. I don't know why I'm here, but you came because you're a people pleaser. But now everybody's miserable because they can tell you're not happy. And then the kids, if there are kids involved, they're going to start trying to make you happy. So now we got a whole other little generation of people becoming people pleasers because you're exhibiting the unhealthy consequences of being one yourself. Not good. Not good. And then the other consequence, so we've mentioned you neglect yourself, your health, your physical health, your mental health gets trashed because you're depressed, you're stressed, you feel angry, you're resentful. You're not enjoying your life, so you're not living fully, you're not present in the activities, and you're taken advantage of. My, it's not good because people, when they learn you can't say no, then you're the person at the office that everybody brings their projects to. Can you help me with this? And because you can't say no, your desk is now piled up with everybody else's projects and you can't get to your own. And one of the articles, and of course I'll post these, one of the articles that I got some of this information, here's a quote from it. If somebody takes advantage of you, it is only their fault once. After that, it's your fault for not teaching them differently. I 100% agree with that. Now, the person taking advantage, which was me in my early marriage, I also was responsible, 100% responsible for recognizing my inappropriate behavior and learning healthier skills, like asking, what can I do for you? Like getting out of myself and not being so selfish. But my husband had to learn that if he's going to allow me to treat him that way, that's on him. He needs to say, I'm not going to allow you to talk to me that way. I'm not going to allow, you can holler and scream and have a fit if you want, but I'm leaving the room. I'm not taking it. So that is on him. So whatever your issues are, it's your responsibility, which is why I end all the episodes with it's your health, it's your responsibility this day and every day, because ain't nobody going to fix you for you. All right. So people pleasing often leads to resentment. That leads to relationship burnout. And that leaves both parties drained, exhausted, and pointing the finger at the other person. So what we need to do is learn to take care of ourselves rather than trying to point the finger and blaming other people for our own problems. So here's what you can do to reduce people pleasing behaviors. And let me just say, I can't imagine any world in which I'd have figured this out on my own. My husband and I literally, and we didn't have any money at the time, we went to therapy solid for 2 years, solid, weekly, I would guess. We went to couples therapy, the two of us with our therapist. We went to a couples group with that therapist. I went to a women's group and he went to a men's group. So we were doing individual therapy. We were doing couples therapy. We were on fire for change, just like people are at the beginning of a weight loss journey. But we didn't quit when the going got tough. We sought continued help. And that's what you need to do because the going's going to get tough. You're going to learn things about yourself that are painful and unpleasant and shameful. But you're also going to be met in therapy with compassion and an understanding this is likely the reason you are like you are. Do you want to continue on that path? Or would you like to learn some skills to handle things differently in your life? The brave people learn the new skills and handle things differently in life. And I'll tell you what, they're the happiest people I've ever met, the ones that work through the things and continue to put the effort into it for the long haul. But they need help. They need peer support. They need professional support. So you're responsible for getting whatever kind of help you need. The first thing you need to do is get to know yourself. That means looking at and getting feedback from others about your behavior and finding out what's driving that for me. How did I get to be this way? And then once you learn how you got to be that way, learning new skills to get those healthy needs met, but in healthier ways. What happens is we use unhealthy ways to get our healthy needs met. There are healthy ways to get healthy needs met. So you need to learn what those are and then put them into practice. And you got to understand that this business of reducing these people-pleasing behaviors takes a lot of time, takes consistent effort. Like I'm talking a lifetime. Because as I said, I've been back to therapy several times over the last years. I'll run into a problem, one of the biggest ones, and probably the last big one that I could not get through for myself was during COVID. And my husband and I went through a really bad time during that as a couple. And I thought, I got to quit looking at his behavior and I got to figure out what is it about this that I need to fix and change. I can't figure this out. So I went to a therapist. We had one session, and that's all it took because I'd had 150 years, but she brought up something that I hadn't considered or either said it in a way that I hadn't considered. And so I thought about it differently and I stewed on what she said for about 5 days. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I knew what I needed to do to change. It was amazing. It was beautiful. And things have been better for me in that regard, and consequently for my husband in that regard. But it takes time and effort. It takes a lifetime. So a therapist can help you, a support group can help you, your peer mentors can help you. And there's a lot of places to get help, but you got to be willing to get the feedback. All right, so some other tips for reducing these people-pleasing behaviors. Think about what you want. Maybe you don't know what your wants or desires or needs are. So you may continue to focus on what other people want and need, but come back to yourself and say, but what do I want in this situation? Because you don't want to swing to the other end. Remember, we want to regress toward the mean. You don't want to go from the person who's a complete people pleaser to a selfish human being. You want to find that middle. How can I make this a win-win? What do you want? What do you need? How can I help you get that? And here's what I need and here's what I want. Can you work with me to get that win-win? As a people pleaser, you've got to learn to set boundaries. You've got to learn to say, no, I can't take on that project. I'm really swamped right now with my own. No, I can't chair that committee. Maybe next year at this time, I'll have more free time. Check with me then. You have to set boundaries. You have to say, Grandma, I love you. The answer is no to that delicious whatever it is you made. My health is the most important thing right now. You have to learn to stand up for yourself. You have to say yes to the things you want to do, and you have to say no to the things you don't want to do. Not all the time. There are going to be times when it's appropriate to do things you want to do, like your daughter's wedding shower, right? Or whatever it happens to be. But at times when you aren't obligated for whatever reasons you think you're obligated, then learn to say, I'm sorry, I'm not available, or that's not something I'd be interested in. So speak up when something's bothering you. Listen, I don't mean to discount what other people are saying. I was just wondering if this idea might add to the other ideas you guys are pulling around. So it's not like you got to say, you know what, that's a stupid idea and you are so wrong. We need to do it this way. That's not what I'm talking about. Speaking up and saying, you know, I've been sitting here listening and I really like this and this and this. Do you think if we added this element, it would make things go more smoothly? So just adding your 2 cents and the value of boundaries. I don't want to say something that might hurt their feelings. Okay, people pleaser, guess what? You're not responsible for their feelings. You don't make them anything. I was talking to a woman today and she was like, I know in order to get past this, I have to have a conversation with this person, but I don't like hurting people. I said, it doesn't have to be hurtful. And if they're hurt, it's not your responsibility. What if you came at it this way? Listen, there might be some things that I say that are hurtful to you. That is not my intention. But in order for me to continue with this relationship, I need to share with you some things about how I feel. I'm not going to go into detail about you did this, you did that. I'm going to share how I felt. When you called me this name, I felt hurt. I also felt angry. When we were talking about such and I suggested such and such, you completely dismissed it and went on, and I felt very dismissed. So it's not about you did this, you did this, you did this, but it's when this happened, I felt this way. So when you have conflict with someone, you share I felt sad. I felt disregarded. I felt unimportant. I felt misunderstood. I felt, not you did. Okay, so some exercises. I'll end up with this. One is practice being alone. It's hard for people who are people pleasers to be alone because they're not getting any validation from anybody that they have worth. So you have to trust that your friends aren't going to abandon you if you're not at every single event. So make some plans with yourself. I'm going to go to a cross stitch class, or I'm going to go to a line dancing class, or I'm going to go to a whatever. And then I'm going to do it. And I'm going to go by myself. And I'm going to be okay. And I'm going to come back and realize that my friends are still my friends. Make a decision by yourself. Honey, I'd like to go out to dinner on Friday night. I'd really like to go to this place because it's in line with my health goals. I'd like to suggest we go there. Would that be agreeable to you? If not, then let's come to a compromise. Practice saying no. No, I'm unable to chair that committee. You know what I had to do when I first started learning these skills? It was back in the day before cell phones. Yep. And I had a phone on the wall with the long cord, and I took a sticky note. And on the sticky note, I wrote, I'll have to get back to you. I'll have to check my calendar and get back to you, because my tendency is people pleaser. I wanted to be included. I'd say yes to everything. So I put that sticky note next to my phone on the wall until I learned that I could say no. I cannot take on one more responsibility. Assertively, respectfully, mindfully, without getting to a point where I was ready to blow up and say, don't ask me to do one more thing. I can't take it. Doesn't have to come to that. Doesn't have to come to that. And quit offering to do things. I'll do it. Don't be the person at the office who volunteers to take all the lunch orders and volunteers to collect all the gifts for the Toys for Tots. Don't. Stop volunteering. Stop offering to do those things. And if you don't want to do them and you're asked, say no. Then you have to learn to reassure yourself. You have to have these conversations. I wasn't invited by my friends to go to the buffet. It doesn't mean they don't love me or don't like me. I understand that they're trying to protect me. Yes, it hurts. And yes, I feel left out, but I know they're doing it to help me. And we are going to meet up later. So they're not abandoning me. So finding ways to reassure yourself. Lots of information in this episode. I think it's a 3 or 4 part listener. You need to listen to it 3 or 4 times because I had to record it twice. God, I'm hoping it's twice. If this doesn't have sound, I don't know. I'll probably get a little impatient. I got a fishing date. I have a fishing date with 2 grandsons and 1 granddaughter, and I am anxious to get out there, even though it's 150,000 degrees. All right, here's your weight loss winformation activity. I want you to talk to yourself when you're alone. I want you to validate your self-worth. I want you to remind yourself of your worth to others and to yourself. All right, Connie, you're alone. I'm feeling a little at loose ends. I don't like to be alone. I like to be with other people because I feel more comfortable and then I don't feel so alone. Oh, that makes sense. Well, you know what? It's okay for me to be alone. I know I have friends. I know that they're there if I call them. I know that, I have value, even if I'm not doing everything I am valuable because I am. So just have these conversations with yourself. That's your winformation activity for this week. Now, let me give you 3 take-home messages that are really important. First of all, hardcore. Here's my firm and fair. More firm, very fair, very firm. If you don't want to be a doormat, then get up off the floor. Don't be a martyr. Don't wallow in your misery. Don't think the world's taking advantage of you. Don't be a victim. That's doormat. Stand up and speak up for yourself. Don't hint at what you want. Ask directly for what you want. I've had family members say things like, well, I told you I couldn't get to the store by myself. In other words, hinting, could you please take me to the store? If you ask me to take you to the store, I'll tell you if I can or if I can't, but I'm not buying into this passive aggressive hinting or this passive hinting. If you want me to take you to the store, then you need to ask me. So if you don't want to be a doormat, get up off the floor. Number 2, remember that we are talking about your health. By being a people pleaser, you are taking a chance on not following through with your healthy goals, which is going to lead you to worse health, physical and mental, because people pleasers, as we know, are anxious, depressed, and can become very resentful. Not good for your physical or emotional health, because a lot of times then we resort to emotional eating or self-punishing eating. All right, so if you're a people pleaser and you're a doormat, get up. We're talking about your health, so it makes it your responsibility to do something about it. And number 3, get help and get happier. All right, friends, I have my fingers crossed that this recorded with sound, and I'm hoping you enjoyed this episode. I know you know lots of people pleasers, so please send it on to them, ask them to give a listen, and I would love to know your comments. This will be posted with video on YouTube, and it's on all the podcasting platforms. Please give me your feedback. And if you'd like to join the online Berry Aftercare community for a month at no charge, email me at info@conniestapletonphd.com. All right, friends, that's it for this week, and I can't wait to see you next week. Thank you for spending your time with me. Bye-bye.